So Valve, after a decade and a bit of not releasing a single player game, decided that for once they'd actually finish a project, and the result of that is a VR only game set as a prequel to Half-Life 2, actually I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. Half-Life is back, you already know that, so let's see what the fuck they've made. I'm not going to be holding back, so if you want to go in blind, you have been warned. Also, make sure you've played episode 2 before this because this is how the game starts.
Yo, holy shit, he dead!
Before we begin, just for reference, I played this on an Oculus Rift S in a pretty small room while standing. And for the 6 of you who care, I'm running a 2060 Super, a Ryzen 2600 and 16 gigs of RAM. That type of spec can play this on a Rift or a Vive. Now, I don't know about the index, given I don't have any houses to remortgage to pay for one. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin. There's something to be said about Valve's decision to make their first flagship VR game a Half-Life one. Originally, the plan was for this to be a Portal game, but after the user testing offices were cleaned of all the vomit on the floors, they decided that Half-Life would probably be a less motion sickness inducing experience, and so development began. Now, this means that Valve has a lot of world to play with while building the environments of the game, which means that they've crafted a world which somehow feels terrifying, awe-inspiring, claustrophobic, and expansive, and somehow all 4 of those at the same time. The blocky nature of Source's geometry has been completely eliminated in Source 2, and all the alien growth growing everywhere somehow makes me feel gross and sick even though all I'm doing is standing in a room with a TV strapped to my face. I'm not doing it. The amount of junk lying around makes the world feel very lived in, with cans and bottles and boxes littering every room. The scale of the world that Valve has developed trumps anything any other developer has achieved, and because of this it leads to a very atmospheric experience. Half-Life Alyx isn't quite the lonely journey of the first game, not with Russell blasting in your ear, nor the cross-country track of the second. Instead, it creates a world and then slam dunks your face in it. No, Half-Life Alyx does not make you feel like Alyx, but it makes you feel like you're truly in the world of Half-Life, and it creates this immense airy atmosphere as a result. It's helped in no small part by the sound. Do you remember the Overwatch announcer from Half-Life 2? Now imagine it feels like that is actually being broadcast to you as you sit in your ass in the living room. The 3D nature of the positioning of the sound, while by no means revolutionary, really helps make the game feel the way it does. The combined radio chatter, the moans of the zombies, the drone of overhead vehicles, the stopping of this fucking thing. It all feels like it's happening directly to you. There's so much specific detail in every section, little sounds and elements. It's honestly staggering how much detail there is in the sound mixing. It not only gives you a sense of space, but also how that space is supposed to make you feel. Not to mention Mike Moraski's fantastic score, which not only gets the adrenaline pumping during the fights, but also does a really good job of making the quieter sections feel extra spooky. I was a big fan of his work in Songs to Test By, and we get a lot of that ambience found in the Portal games here, which really adds to the atmosphere. But it never strays into feeling too techy, like you're actually playing a Portal game instead of a Half-Life one. From what I know, it took Valve around 4 years to make this game, and I have a feeling that the major amounts of polish on display in the world and atmosphere are a result of this. Having said that, I'd like to actually play it now instead of just looking around, given we've been waiting 16 years for a non-episode game to release. There's 2 main ways to move around, either by teleporting or by walking with the joystick. Now, I played the game with continuous movement, and I think that's the way to play, if you can stomach it. Which, I've never had any motion sickness problems with joystick movement in VR, so your mileage may vary on that one. It allows you to make fine movements much easier than pointing at the ground to teleport. However, the game has moments that require the use of the teleport, as there's no jump function, so you have to teleport across gaps. So in continuous motion, you can also teleport, and that's why I feel like it's the way to play, because you get the best of both worlds. The movement speed of the joystick is quite slow, not annoyingly so, but during intense combat it can feel like you're a little gimped to moving cover to cover, so teleporting is a nice way to move between cover, and you can use it in combat for faster movement. And if your physical space is too small, you can use the joystick to move out of cover so don't slam your face into the wall. Shit.
Overall, the movement, once you get used to the multiple ways of moving,
doesn't ever feel like it's getting in your way. Now, there are some weird little moments in the level design which you can't move through, and instead the game blink teleports you through. It happens a lot during the start of the game, and sometimes later in the game, but it's a little jarring for you to be suddenly halted so you can teleport through a small gap. The same also happens when climbing down ladders, which they could have designed their ladders to extend past the platform you're standing on so you can grab them and move down, but it does kind of affect the way they can design their geometry. There is climbing up ladders, which you can turn off if you want, but instead of naturally pulling yourself up to the top, you just get jankily put there. In the trailer, this actually looks totally fine, but in the game, it takes too long for it to realize that you're on top of the ladder, so you're stuck there for about a second before it decides to throw you to the top. It also has this weird side effect where if you slam your face into the ladder, in what I can only presume is a softlock prevention method, it will warp you all the way to the very top, which feels very strange, especially when it does it when you're still trying to climb the ladder.
Oh, and get yourself a pair of Russells on the way out.
Russells?
The gloves, Alyx. You know, the gravity gloves.
A lot of VR games have a mechanic that means you don't have to directly pick up objects to prevent you from having to bend down all the fucking time, or to make it easy to grab shit in a smaller room. Often, it's just a matter of the item magically being dragged towards your hands with no explanation. Half-Life Alyx gives context to why you could do this, that being the Russells or the gravity gloves. Now, it's not the fact that the mechanic is explained in-world that I like, it's the mechanical implementation that I really love. Watch what happens when I drag something towards me in Boneworks. It flies towards me with constant velocity, and overall, it's functional, but it feels a little I guess. With the gravity gloves, not only do you have to flick your wrist to initiate the pull, you must then catch it out of the air as it arcs towards you. This simple, but probably difficult to implement change makes picking stuff up, about 60% of your game time, the funnest action in the game. Maybe the funnest action in any VR game I've ever played. It's so incredibly satisfying to pull stuff towards you with the flick of the wrist, and the feedback from the sound to the vibration to the neat arc each item takes makes you want to grab every item with it, even if it's easier just to pick it up off the shelf it's on. You can even change the arc of the object based on how you flick your wrist, which is a neat touch and allows you to get stuff in tight spaces. I mean, just watch this gameplay of me picking up junk just for the hell of it. One of the main puzzle mechanics that the game offers, aside from its various world physics-based ones, is Alyx's multi-tool. To open a door, ammo stash, or upgrade station, you'll need to use the multi-tool to complete some type of minigame. It'll either be moving a ball in 3D space to line up all these lasers, or moving a point around a ball with all these red things that you can't touch. I'm not going to discuss these at length because they're serviceable, not done too often, and they make good use of the fact that you're interacting in a 3D environment. This one here, when you rotate the ball, can get a little too tricky late into the game, given how difficult it is to move your other hand without rotating directly into a red thing. Oh, fuck. The other main mechanic of the multi-tool is these circuit puzzles. These are a cool concept, a spin on the circuit puzzle trope connecting wires seen in many games. But instead, you alter the path of physical wires in the walls, which means you're directly building the electric circuit from the power source to the object being powered. There are 3 guns that you get access to, a basic pistol, a shotgun, and an SMG type NG weapon. None of these are two-handed weapons. They all only act from one hand, with the other one being able to hold the bottom for support, which actually doesn't do anything in-game. It's the act of you resting your hand on the other that does the stabilization. This, while it seems lacking to only have one-handed weapons, I am actually on the side of the devs on this choice, because while two-handed weapons are cool, they more often than not present issues that make single-handed weapons just feel way more satisfying to use. When you grab a two-handed weapon, both hands get locked to the gun, which makes sense, but the problem is that your hands, in real life, aren't locked to anything. This doesn't look weird, does it? This means that unless you're always trying to keep your hands in the same place as your virtual hands, they'll be constantly drifting away from each other, and consciously trying to correct for this takes more mental energy than you'd think, when what you really want to be focusing on is aiming and positioning. This is why the only two-handed option is to balance on the bottom, because in the real world, you are actually balancing one hand on the other, so it feels natural to do, and your hands will always be locked to each other. The weapons themselves feel great to use and are different enough from each other that they all feel justified being different weapons. But it would be nice to have some more variety, given this is only about 20% of the usual roster. The pistol is the first gun you get, and unlike most starting pistols, it remains useful throughout the game. Now, the weapons in this game go for a more realistic reloading, both in the actions you have to do to reload and in the fact that you discard all the bullets in a magazine if you reload and it's not empty. But there are some conveniences that make the weapons not entirely analogous to reality, which I appreciate. Dropping out the mag is a simple button press, and pulling back the slide is also a button press, although this one you can do with your hands if you really want to. This makes the guns feel more real, but never in an intrusive way. Not to rag on Boneworks more, but the realistic weapon reloading strikes me as a little bit of realism for the sake of realism, despite the fact that ejecting half-empty magazines doesn't mean anything because the bullets are only removed from your stash when you fire. The interesting decision making, at least for me, comes from the management of ammo, given you don't want to waste any, rather than the fumbling around you have to do with your gun to reload. Which, granted, there is some fumbling around in the Half-Life Alyx, but it's very fast to reload when you get good at it, and you only ever fumble when something has you really shook. The pistol acts as your basic single shot. There is no sniper weapon in this game, so the pistol is the best you got. You also get a lot more ammo for it than the shotgun, so you, or at least I, tend to default to it more, because you don't want to waste your precious shotgun shells. Speaking of the shotgun is the second weapon you acquire, and like the pistol, it has a fancy reload in which you insert the shells into the top. This one, you close the slide, I guess, with a flick of the wrist, which feels great to do and is difficult to mess up. Like I said, you don't get many shotgun shells, but the ones you do get make quite an impact. The sound alone is really powerful, and I think it's the best feeling shotgun in the series, including the double shot of the normal shotgun. Okay, maybe that one is a little more satisfying. However, the damage it does, specifically on the Combine, doesn't quite feel like enough. Feels like you should be able to down these guys in 1 or 2 shots, but usually it takes 2 or sometimes 3 or 4. On zombie type enemies, however, it feels great though. The last weapon comes about halfway through the game, this Combine energy weapon. I don't really have much to say about it, to be completely honest. It's just a more compact version of the pulse rifle from Half-Life 2. It does its job, being a more powerful, longer range firearm for the more challenging fights that occur later in the game. It does its best to feel different from the pistol, given that they're both long range single bullet type firearms, by not only being an energy weapon so that the sound and the design of firing is different, but also on 2 key factors. It's less accurate than the pistol, especially over longer distances, and it can output damage at a much faster rate than the pistol. This means it occupies a different place in your arsenal, being the damage dealer when you need to down enemies quicker, while not replacing the pistol's function as the accurate single shot. And you can even see me using the pistol during the fights at the end of the game. Although, do get a laser sight for this one. I've got no idea where the iron sights are on this thing. Oh yeah, getting a laser sight, that's something you can do in this game. At certain places throughout the game, there will be upgrade stations that you can use to add attachments to your weapons, which you pay for with the resin that you find in the world alongside ammo, grenades, and health canisters. This, I feel, is something that not only works in your first playthrough, but is going to help make subsequent playthroughs feel less stale, as you can choose to get upgrades that you didn't the previous times, or get none, or just try and get them all. The resin that you find throughout the world, as well as ammo, which you don't get a lot of by the way, makes you search every room, every cupboard, every drawer for supplies, scrounging through bins like a dirty homeless man. This could, if it were a normal game, drastically kill the pace, as you spend 5 minutes in every room trying to find supplies. But because it's in VR, searching a room is as easy as in real life. Easier even, because you can just use the gravity gloves to pick up and move shit that's out of your reach. But it's not easy to find every bit of resin. Valve does a good job of hiding them in little corners, just out of your reach, behind barnacles. You're always incentivized to search for the stuff, but there's enough obvious ones out there that it never feels like you have to, so that your guns aren't super underleveled by the end of the game. Moving away from that tangent, the upgrades themselves range from normal attachments like reflex and laser sights, to more unique ones like the extended mag options, which instead of just being more ammo in the chamber, have a slot for 3 mags that you have to load, or, a fast reloader for the shotgun. Alright, let's look at the fights you have to use these guns in. A lot of the fights involve hiding behind cover and poking out to do some damage before hiding again. I'm not gonna lie, this is done a lot, but to prevent you from just hiding in one spot, the game often puts you in situations that force you to move out. Not only do the Combine love to hide behind cover as much as you do, they also actively move on in your position. The basic enemies will slowly make their way towards you, and these fucking shotgun guys will really sneak up on you if you're not careful. They just constantly move on your location, and so you pop your head around the corner and oh, there they are, staring at you.
Oh, hello there.
The minigun enemies don't pursue you as much, but if they're firing and you don't have a cover, you're fucking dead, mate. The addition of grenades really helps battles feel dynamic. Enemies will often throw grenades, which force you to either move to a different bit of the cover, or if you've got good enough line of sight, throw it back at them. The fact you have to physically throw them back at them means you have to have the dexterity to be able to accurately throw it, and not mess it up and leave it at your feet to explode. If you've got a really good spot, you can use the gravity gloves to catch them straight out of the air and toss them right in their face, which feels really good to do. A nice touch is that you can heal and fight at the same time, which takes away one hand in your ability to move, but you can still lean and fire, and as health stations are often behind cover, this works quite well. The way they vary the environments means that you never feel like the fights are the same. They move you from location to location, moving from open battlefields to shootouts indoors, or to having different advantage or disadvantage points against the enemies. The other enemies you fight include the zombies, which will shuffle towards you slowly and aren't that much of a threat, but will take your ammo given you don't have a crowbar. We have head crabs in 3 varieties, the normal and poison types we've already seen, and a new armored one that you have to shoot a weak point to kill. which are scuttly little fuckers. We also have the
Dog-looking lightning strike.
which provide you with power cell alternatives and can inhabit dead bodies to use strengthened attacks, acting as a little bit of a mini-boss during the Northern Star. Antlines make a return in 2 varieties never seen before, these red ones that just love to surround you and need 3 weak points to shoot until they die, and these blue ones that shoot lightning at you, which you can sneak a shot on the main weak point to kill them early. So there's some variety here, and you're never facing the same enemies for an extended period of time. They switch them out, often using one type of enemies for a specific section before moving on to a different one, so you're never overwhelmed by 6 different enemy types all at once. In terms of the game's story, the first thing I want to bring up is Russell, bless his Kiwi soul, which is a character that seems very un-Half-Life, talking to you through most of the game with another un-Half-Life edition, Alyx talking back.
What?
Which, I'll be honest, is actually really great. Russell and Alyx's dynamic is actually quite endearing.
What do you think, Russ? Guess we better cooperate.
Yeah, she sounds like she means business.
We had a good run.
Cooperate.
Russell acts as the engineer tutorial man, who's a little more concerned over the safety of the Russells than of Alyx, but never to a degree that makes him feel like a dickhead. Russell's quipping means that the game never borders on full horror, which I think is the right move. Half-Life is not about being scary, it's more of an existential, atmospheric experience, rather than being scary in the moment, which is not lost in this game, even given the fact that there is usually someone always there talking to you. Alyx herself gets a lot to play off, both with her dad and joking about with Russell, trying to keep her spirits high.
Yeah?
Can you just talk
About what?
about anything? Literally anything.
Well, I think that given our situation, your irrational fear of the dark is actually quite appropriate.
This has the risk of feeling forced, but the way that the dialogue is paced means it never gets in the way of the moment you'd rather be left in silence, as Russell will cut out if the game wants you to be alone for a while.
Russell?
Alex, come in.
It helps relieve the tension and stress that both you and Alyx share as you enter a difficult situation.
You chat.
I mentioned before that Russell acts as the tutorial giver, and while that runs the risk of feeling patronizing, like you're constantly being told what to do, but it's kept to a minimum, and is always done in character as a reaction to the world, so it feels natural. There's only one point in the game which I feel like borders on patronizing.
Alex, we're getting close to the vault now. You're not going to have many more chances to use your resin.
The story is paced really well. You get a nice flowing 4-act piece, with 4 major locations separated by minor ones, that means the game never feels like it's jumping ahead of you or dragging behind. The story, for the large majority of the time, involves you trying to break into this vault, which at first is believed to house a super weapon, then a person. Well, a specific person. Now, at first I was under the impression that the weapon was the gravity gun, even though that doesn't really make much sense given that the Russells are supposed to be the predecessor to the gun, but whatever. But as soon as they said,
They didn't build it to keep us out. They're trying to keep something in.
I went, oh, it's the G-Man, isn't it? Even this little bit of dialogue reaffirmed that belief.
Look, this guy we've got in there survived Black Mesa. He raised holy hell and then just disappeared.
And guess what? I was right. See, the characters all think it's Gordon Freeman, which they have every suspicion to in the game. See, the problem is that every person playing this game has already played Half-Life 2, and they know he doesn't show up for another 5 years. The only other entities worth a damn are the Advisors, which we've already seen in this game, and the G-Men, so it's very easy to make that logical leap and guess the ending twist halfway through the game. Luckily, the game saves us with a fantastic twist on the ending of Episode 2, which some people might feel is a cop-out, and while I can understand an opinion, I don't really agree with it. The acquisition of Alyx, in place of the death of Eli, is not only a move I didn't see coming, it fits into the already established story neatly, is not going to be easy to follow up with, hence why I don't think it's a cop-out, and even if they just wanted to follow in Episode 2's ending, they can't, because we've already seen that story thanks to Mark Laidlaw. So, all in all, good shit, Valve, you did it again. I think the best way to describe Half-Life Alyx is not as a revolutionary VR game, but as a streamlined one. Nothing it does is really that new, but what it does do is it takes what are effectively these tech demos that developers have been making for VR, and combines them into an experience that, for the first time, feels like a game in the same vein that a flat-screen one does. Nothing up until now in VR has felt so complete, and like it's taking full advantage of the medium that it's in. Half-Life Alyx isn't really showing the world what VR is capable of, it's the realization of what it's capable of.